Right, it's gone 8 o'clock. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Get Set for the Games webinar hosted by the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce. I'm Raj Kandola, Head of Policy and Strategic Relationships at the Chamber, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's event. Now, we know we're only 70 days away from the biggest sporting extravaganza this region's ever seen. Lots of excitement, approximately 1 million people expected to visit the area during the games, but with that as well, we know that there is likely to be changes to trading regulations, to traffic networks that businesses need to be aware of. And what today's session is all about is how businesses can plan ahead to avoid disruption, but also maximize opportunities. So really what we want to focus on in this webinar today is how businesses can ready themselves for the games, what will be the advertising and trading restrictions that will be put in place ahead of the games, the potential impact the games will have on the transport network and the steps that businesses can take to minimize traffic disruption, and also how businesses can access the Get Set for the Games online hub, which provides a raft of information on how firms can prepare for the summer. So in terms of an agenda for today's session, very shortly we'll hear from Craig Cooper, who's the Programme Director for the Commonwealth Games for the City, obviously Birmingham City Council being the host council for the games themselves. And then we're going to hear from Anne Shaw, who is Director at Transport for West Midlands, someone who's done a lot of work with the Chamber in the past. We'll then also hand over to Sarah Crane, who's a Senior Travel Demand Management Officer from Transport for West Midlands, the Commonwealth Games team. And then we'll hear from Paul Lancaster, Assistant Director of Regulation Enforcement at the City Council. And then what we'll do is we'll have about 10-15 minutes at the end for questions. So any questions that you might have, feel free to put them in the chat box throughout the session, or you can wait until the end of the presentations, and we'll wrap up and look to finish by around 9 o'clock. Again, if you do have any questions, obviously do feel free to post them in the chat function. My colleagues will pick those up. And without any further delay, I'd like to hand over to Craig. Craig, over to you.
Fantastic, thank you, Raj. I'm going to start with a short video.
Our diverse city has a rhythmic pace, an attack on the senses, smells, sounds, tastes. Vivid colours of graffiti will make you double take. The atmosphere here is something you can't fake. Check out the food on Soho Road and Ladypool Road and Stratford Road. Michelin stars, we've got a load. If you didn't already, well, now you know. We've got art installations in the streets, and people will smile at you when you meet. It's in our bones, it's just what we do. We're bold enough to say,
all right, Bab, how are you?
Our communities share space in over 500 parks in this city.
Our independent galleries are unafraid and gritty.
Say hi to this icon, because she's just pretty. And the community link-ups keep us pretty busy. We meet to skate and make music. It's a vibe. All ages and races bring the streets alive. Here, we tend to celebrate a lot. Cultures intertwine in the streets, in the shops, and we're kind of extra, so we pull out all the stops. This vibrant city where the party don't stop. The Commonwealth Games are soon to come. To our Alexander Stadium.
To our home.
To our place where industries rose. A city of 1,000 trades echoes through the roads. Through the tracks with HS2, our industry's still creating the new. Down the road is the RSC, then come to the local theatres with thee. If you want some jokes, hit up Lee.
Where we laugh intergenerationally.
Here, we're Birmingham. Here, we're bold.
Fantastic. I like to think that video just encapsulates who we are as a city and quite what we're about. So we took a bold step to host the 2022 Commonwealth Games 4 years earlier than we'd originally anticipated. And where did this boldness ambition come from? Well, it came from a sense of confidence in this city and its future. And the Games ignites a golden decade for Birmingham. It absolutely puts us at the heart of the Commonwealth and the heart of the world, centre of the world during August this year. The city of 1,000 trades, as we've just seen, is now a city of 7,000 startups. And it is our intention to use the Games as a platform to celebrate and boost business, create employment, training opportunities, and attract more inward investment. Thank you to the 1 million plus workforce across the city for helping us to show the world what it means to be bold, to be skilled, creative, connected, dynamic, diverse. And now it's time for us to be bold and really show ourselves off to the world and who we are and what we're about. With just 70 days, as Raj mentions, 10 weeks, our challenges for business is not only how you plan ahead, but how you take this opportunity this summer to participate, to come and enjoy the festival feeling across the city and with our partners across the region. I really want you to get involved. I really don't want you to take the restrictions that may be put in place as something where you advise your staff and your teams to just stay away from the city. It is going to be absolutely buzzing, and it's a real opportunity, one for you as businesses to participate, but also your staff to really get involved and enjoy the feel of the summer. So really keen for everyone to actively involve and really participate. As a way of introduction, what else can I say? But thank you. Good luck. Let's seize the opportunity and let's use our style and our assertiveness to demonstrate to the world exactly what we're about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Craig. Really fantastic video that I think really sums up the whole ethos and spirit of what's happening this summer. So really great to see. Now I believe we're going to have a video from Anne Shaw, Executive Director at Transport for West Midlands.
Hello, my name is Anne Shaw and I'm the Executive Director for Transport for West Midlands. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today, but I wanted to thank you for coming and spending some time to understand what's going to be happening during the Commonwealth Games. Now we know that during the summer it's going to be a fantastic spectacle of sport and other festival activities, and with over 1 million visitors we are expecting it to be very busy. We've been planning, along with the organising committee and Birmingham City Council as the host council, to make sure that we've got sufficient transport services in place to make sure that we can deal with over 1 million visitors, as well as all of those athletes and other people that will be working on the Commonwealth Games. So we've added to our existing public transport services. We're putting in additional shuttle buses that will take people from certain locations to the venues, and also some temporary park and ride locations as well. Now it does mean that some of our roads will be busier, particularly around the venues, and we will also have some different traffic management in place, particularly to protect local residents and businesses in and around and near those venues as well. So we wanted to make sure that you had as much information to help you to sort of plan ahead, make sure that we can minimise the disruption to your business, that you can still get your workers to work should they need to, or you can think about different ways that you can operate as a business during the Commonwealth Games as well. So the team will take you through what's happening during the Games, where we expect those busy places to be, where you can get some further information, and how you can keep in touch with us to make sure that you're able to sort of think about what's going to be happening, how's it going to impact on you as a business, and what you can do to make sure that impact of the Commonwealth Games is minimal to you and the business that you are running. So thank you for coming. Make sure you get as much information as possible, and the team are here to help you plan ahead and have a really good summer. Thank you and goodbye.
Right, can I now bring in Sarah Crane, Senior Travel Demand Management Officer from Transport for West Midlands. Sarah, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Raj, and good morning, everyone. Just going to share my slides. So I'm going to talk about travelling during the Games and how you may be affected. So I'll start off with a brief overview of the Games and a few numbers to get us going this morning. So the Games will include 19 different sports, and this includes para sports, which occur alongside the able-bodied sports. There are 15 competition venues across the West Midlands, and I'll go over these in the next slide. 11 days of competition from the 28th of July through to the 8th of August, but we expect the transport operation to be more like a 30-day transport operation from mid-July through to mid-August. 12,000 athletes, officials, media and Games family will be coming to the region, along with 1 million ticketed and non-ticketed spectators and a large workforce of over 41,000, including a large number of volunteers. And of course, we need to consider the 4 million or so residents and businesses of the West Midlands and the significant freight movement in and around the cities and the area. So as I mentioned, there are 15 different competition venues across the West Midlands and slightly further afield, as shown on the map here. I'll just focus on the venues within Birmingham itself. So to the north in Sutton Park and the streets of Boldmere, we have the triathlon. In the Perry Bar region, we've got Alexander Stadium, which will host not only the athletics, but also the opening and closing ceremonies. And then in the centre, we've got Arena Birmingham, which will host the gymnastics, and Smithfield, which will host the basketball and beach volleyball. And then to the south of the city, we've got Edgbaston, which will obviously host the cricket, and then the university, which will host the hockey and squash, but also be the home of one of the 3 athlete villages, hosting around 3,000 athletes. So the level of activity and additional people is obviously really great for the region and the city, but it will have some transport impacts. I'll talk through the impacts of the venues within Birmingham city centre. Impacts and maps for those other locations on the previous screen are available on the website, and we'll share that at the end if that's of interest for you to look into. So each competition venue and non-competition venue, so for example, the training venues or the athlete villages, will have what we call a local area traffic management and parking plan. So these are event day temporary traffic management and parking restrictions, primarily in place to protect residents and businesses, but also to support the venue operations during the Games period. A few top tips in terms of navigating these. First element is to plan ahead. So I'll be going through some of these documents in the next couple of slides, but really to check these documents out on our website ahead of the Games, so you understand how you may be affected and how it could impact your business. The areas that these cover are predominantly around venues, and they will be incredibly busy during this period. So we ask you to perhaps consider receiving deliveries on non-competition days or outside of the session start and end times when those areas will be particularly busy. So I'll start with the map for Arena Birmingham. Appreciate there's a lot of information here, but we will be sharing the slides and links to these maps at the end so that you can look in greater detail. So around the venue, there's an area of controlled parking, which the roads highlighted in the pink colour. On these roads, similar to other controlled parking zones, you should only be parking on these roads if you're a resident, a business or a visitor who has applied for a permit ahead of time. These permits will be free and will need to be applied for via the Birmingham City Council website portal, which will open later this month. The permit should be displayed on your windscreen when parking on street to avoid a fine. If you're parking off street, a private car park, a driveway, then you won't need to display a permit. Any roads in orange, so really in close proximity to the venue itself, such as St Vincent Street and Cambridge Street, a bit further south, are areas where vehicles are not permitted to stop. So on those roads, you won't be allowed to wait, load, unload, or park. Businesses will be able to park and receive deliveries in private off-street car parks, as they may do normally. Around the venue itself, King Edward's Road and part of Edward Street will be closed during the Games, and this shaded in that dark red colour on the map, and there will be diversions in place around those routes. Finally, there's a series of small red dots on the map. And these are vehicle permit checkpoints. So for those looking to access the arena and the northern section of Cambridge Street, which is in the purpley colour, vehicles will require permits to access those areas. And again, they're applied for from the City Council on the portal, which will be available later this month. So these restrictions are in place partially from the 21st of July, but then fully in place when there are events going on at the arena, which is from the 28th of July through to the 6th of August, with back to kind of normal operations on the 7th of August. Moving on to the Smithfield venue, there are less restrictions in place for the venue in South Sides. Again, the orange streets indicate no stopping or parking streets, and that's, you know, the no stopping, waiting, loading or unloading. And then we've got some changes to operations to Claybrook Street and Skinner Lane. Claybrook Street will have its one-way direction switched, so it will run in a westbound direction, and Skinner Lane will become one-way in the same direction. And then Pershaw Street, north of Bromsgrove Street, will be one-way in a southbound direction. These roads will be protected by a vehicle permit checkpoint, that little red dot on the map. And again, only vehicles displaying a permit will be granted access to these roads. And as I said, anyone who needs access because they're a business or resident in these areas will be able to apply for a permit on the Birmingham City Council website. So these operations at Smithfield are in place from the 28th of July through to the 8th of August. So as part of the Games, there are 4 road events, a great opportunity for the Games to get out into the region and showcase what a great area we have. So there's 4 different road events: the triathlon, which is being held in Sutton Park and on the streets of Boldmere, the marathon, which will be held in the city centre in the south of Birmingham, which I'll come on to in more detail, the time trial in Wolverhampton and Dudley, and the cycle road race in Warwick. So road events do generate road closures, and as such there is a fairly significant disruption to local transport operations. For the city centre, it's obviously the marathon, which I'll come on to in more detail. Also worth mentioning the Queen's Baton Relay. It's arriving in St Vincent and the Grenadines this morning, but it will spend 25 days in England in the lead up to the Games, ending at the opening ceremony. Transport impacts of the Baton Relay will be fairly limited. There'll be a small number of rolling road closures, but I don't expect that you'll be impacted greatly. So coming on to the marathon will take place on Saturday the 30th of July, with the route really aiming to showcase Birmingham. So the route comprises 2 core sections, starting in Smithfield, heading south out of the city along the Pershaw Road, past Edgbaston, a little loop around Cannon Hill Park, before continuing on the Pershaw Road towards Sturchley and Bourneville. And athletes will complete that section twice before heading into the city centre. In the city centre, we'll go along Hurst Street, through the Chinese Quarter and Gay Village, towards New Street Station. From New Street, athletes will pass Paradise Circus, complete a loop in front of Centenary Square before continuing north towards the Jewellery Quarter, before heading back into the city centre, past St Philip's Cathedral and finishing at Victoria Square. As you might expect, there will be many road closures associated with the marathon along the entire length of the route, and in turn it will be fairly disruptive for the transport network. However, we really hope it's a great opportunity to showcase the city, and we hope that lots of spectators and residents will come out on the day to see the event. So these road closures, they are likely to be in place from around 2:30 in the morning on Saturday the 30th of July until about 3:30 in the afternoon. We're currently working up those detailed road closure plans, and we'll be able to share that in due course. We'll also have interactive maps available on the website next week. So here's a snapshot of one for day 2 of the Games, which is Marathon Day, between 7 and 10. So what you'll be able to do is be able to select a particular day, and select a time period, and then see where the hotspots on the network will be. So as I said, this is day 2 between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. when the marathon's taking place, and those road closures I just talked about are in place. So you can see there's some fairly significant hotspots on the transport network, particularly at Five Ways. Obviously, it's a busy junction on a normal day, and that will be a little bit busier. Also, where the A38 hits the ring road as well, will be particularly busy. So it's really important that businesses can keep operating, and so the city can thrive as a result of the games, as Craig was talking about earlier. So we really want to help you think about how to operate and how perhaps you could adapt during the games. So as we said, we're here to help and support you, but it's likely that you may need to have discussions with your staff, visitors, customers, patients, delivery and servicing partners, family and friends, to provide them with information in relation to the games and potential impacts. Some of the things we look to consider when speaking to those audiences are related to what we call the 4 R's, which stands for reduce, remode, retime and reroute. While fully appreciate that not all options will be feasible for all people, it's useful to start considering what, as a business, you may be able to do to prepare for the games. So remoding, for example, is it possible for staff who typically drive into the city to walk, cycle or use public transport to travel in? Retiming, could people perhaps retime their journeys to times and days when the transport network is less busy? The marathon's a good example, happening predominantly on the Saturday morning and early afternoon. Could journeys be retimed to later in the day to come into the city, perhaps to see the marathon finishing, and then continue with your afternoon and evening plans? And then rerouting around obviously those closed roads, but also the congested areas, and as indicated on the map. So the sooner people are provided with information, obviously the earlier they can plan. So thanks for joining this webinar today. So as we said, our team have access to and can share a wealth of data and information, a lot of which is on the website or will be in the coming weeks, to help you understand those busiest days and times. Just going to touch on those vehicle permit checkpoints in a little bit more detail. As I explained earlier, in some locations in close proximity to venues, there are these vehicle permit checkpoints. For example, the northern section of Cambridge Street near Arena Birmingham. And vehicles passing these checkpoints will need a permit and will be able to apply for those from Birmingham City Council using an online portal later this month. It's worth mentioning there are some exceptions to requiring a permit. Any blue light vehicles, police, fire and ambulance won't require a permit. Other medical vehicles such as carers providing in-home care will not require a permit. Instead, we're working with NHS trusts and their partners, and they'll be using a letter along with ID. And then the other group who won't require permits are delivery and servicing partners. They will, however, need to provide some kind of proof of manifest or order confirmation to the address they're travelling to within that particular area, and some form of personal company ID. And again, we're working with a lot of delivery and servicing partners anyway, but you may wish to talk to those who typically provide deliveries in your area. Included some top tips on the slide to bear in mind, particularly with regards to deliveries. If you can consider organising deliveries when the venue isn't operating, that would be particularly helpful and avoid any delays, but in particular avoiding the start and end times of sessions when spectators are arriving and leaving. And the information about that is available on the website. Also worth mentioning that pedestrian flows will be particularly high near to venues, so important to bear that in mind from a safety perspective in terms of loading and unloading any deliveries. And again, encouraging staff, customers, visitors to travel by public transport, walking and cycling as much as possible. So with regards to deliveries, please bear in mind that this is the case for the venues themselves. For events like the road events, like the marathon, where there are road closures, deliveries will not be possible. So there it's really to think about organising deliveries prior to road closures being put in place or after those road closures have been removed. So just coming to an end now and leaving you with a few top tips. So really thinking about planning ahead and checking the latest travel updates before setting out for your journey. Roads will be busier than usual, so allowing extra time and avoiding travelling by car where you can. helping customers and visitors plan their travel, perhaps by including travel information in meeting invites or within ticket confirmations for attractions and events. Encouraging staff who drive to travel by alternative means may mean they have an easier journey. And again, could staff travel at different times to avoid the queues and travel outside of those games peaks when events are starting and finishing? Aiming to take deliveries outside of the busy periods in the competition schedule where possible. And really important to stay in the know. There's lots of information on our website, and we've also got a Twitter account, which I'll come on to in the next couple of slides. So lastly, keeping you informed. This is very much the start, and we're here to help you right through to the closing ceremony. So hopefully you may have started to see some of our campaign around City, the Get Set for the Games campaign, which is really focused on supporting residents and businesses prepare for the Games. Transport for West Midlands, Birmingham City Council and the organising committee are working together with businesses to ensure the city and the region can continue to function and thrive during the Commonwealth Games. There may be changes required to how you usually work, how your employees and visitors travel, so planning ahead will be important. We're here to support businesses across the region as you get ready for the Games. And as well as webinars like this, we've got in-person business droppings and briefings and other online webinars, as well as materials to help you plan ahead. So how to access this information? We obviously want to make sure you're kept informed with the most up-to-date information and advice. So the first point of call is the Games website. So that's birmingham2022.com/getset as shown on screen. And that area of the website is your one-stop shop or source of accurate, up-to-date information for all your travel advice in the lead up to the Games. The maps I showed you earlier, they're all on there, so you can start to look at that, as well as the competition schedule and some top tips as well. And as we get towards the Games, more information such as those disruption maps will be available, so you can really pinpoint the days, times and locations where you may experience an impact on your business operations. We'll also be sharing information and advice with partners, including the Chamber and your local business improvement district. So we thank them for acting as a conduit for us. We also have a travel advice newsletter. So this newsletter aims to support you and your business in planning for travel during the Games. You'll find information on changes to the transport network, advice on how to plan ahead. So these are currently issued fortnightly. They'll ramp up to weekly in July and be issued daily during the Games to provide you with up-to-date information and advice for the following day. I've included a sign-up link on the slide, which will be shared afterwards. So if you wish to sign up, then you can do. So I'll come to a close there, but I'd really recommend that you take a check of the website and also follow us on Twitter at GetSet2022 for more information. Thank you. I'll pass back to Raj.
Thank you, Sarah. That was really informative. A lot of information in there. I think, like you said, businesses will need to kind of take that away, digest it, have a proper read through those links. My colleague Erin's just put the Get Set link in there as well, so people can start having a look at that after this webinar. And I think the message is really key, like you said, planning in advance, preparing in advance, seeing what can be done differently to avoid any disruption. So yeah, no, thank you very much for that. Right now, we're going to bring in Paul Lancaster from Birmingham City Council. As I said, Paul is the Assistant Director of Regulation Enforcement at the City Council, and he's playing a leading role in setting up the regulatory plans for the Commonwealth Games. So Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Raj, and good morning, everyone. I apologise if I've got a little bit of a lisp for today. I managed to knock a tooth out yesterday, so it's not my normal sort of eloquent self. I will try and claim. Craig, I don't want any comments from you on that one. Anyway, if I give you an overview of the advertising and trading regulations, we had a special piece. Next slide, please, Rachel. The Birmingham Commonwealth Games Act, which was an Act of Parliament that was specifically enacted to deal with different elements of requirements for the Commonwealth Games. It gives you essential temporary measures, but it includes a prohibition on unauthorised association with the Games. Typical example is having a Commonwealth Games bun, something like that. If you haven't got a permission, then you can't do things like that. It's similar to legislation in the past for the London 2012 Olympics and Paralympic Games and the Glasgow Commonwealth Games. We've got designated areas around venues which actually introduced advertising and trading restrictions at specified times. There are a number of exceptions to help minimise disruption to existing businesses, and they include a provision for a right to compensation if we get it wrong in enforcing those, because the enforcement is undertaken by Birmingham City Council. It is aiming to protect the Commonwealth Games brand and also to stop ticket touting. Next slide, please. So where are these areas of coverage? Well, we're concentrating on Birmingham, but there's a similar area around all of the other venues across the West Midlands. So the Alexander Stadium from the 21st of July to the 8th of August, the City Centre from the 24th of July to the 8th of August, Edgbaston from the 28th of July to the 8th of August, Marathon Course the 29th and 30th of July, Sutton Park 28th of July to the 31st of July, and then the University of Birmingham from the 21st of July to the 10th of August. That's on the slide. We've actually got the regulations and maps for each area. So when we give you the slide package, that link there, which is highlighted blue here, will actually give you all of those different areas. It's important to say, though, that they are restricted as much as possible. The two main areas, or three main areas that have a lot of events, which are Alexander Stadium, Birmingham City Centre, and the University of Birmingham, are longer, but the others are much shorter. Thank you, Rachel. So what is association with the Games? It's a series, the use of representations. It's a series of words, imagery, or both, which suggests publicly that a business is officially associated with the Games. So you can't just put our Birmingham B20 logo up there and then try and claim that you're an official sponsor. Intellectual property protection, words, font and logos. And I've already had some people contact about, can we use a particular logo that we're going to use in Birmingham about this. Good news, I heard yesterday evening late on that that's actually going to be cleared. So I'll write back and formally give that information to the person who corresponded with me. Certain words and phrases, when in conjunction with each other, might be considered by Birmingham 2022. That's not the City Council. That is the organising committee of the Commonwealth Games, to be a representation and therefore an association with the Games. Going for gold in 2022 is a typical one there. Again, this slide will give guidance on the right of association for you later on. The authorisation process. So in advertising, Games location advertising is captured by the advertising offence. It's defined in the Games Act as where the person does something in the vicinity of a specified Games location at any time during a specified period, and the thing is done wholly or partly for the purpose of promoting a product, service or businesses specific to members of the public who are in the vicinity of the Games location or who are watching or listening to a broadcast of a Games event. So that could be you might hear the term ambush marketing. That's the sort of thing that can go there, and you see that outside major sporting venues on many occasions, where there's often inferior products that are around associated with that advertising. So open you get an authorization for advertising if your premises within that area from the 10th of January up to the 1st of July. It's free of charge, and there's an application form at the link that's on the slide, and they are actually processing those very, very quickly. So I would advise people to apply as soon as possible, so you know everything's there. There's no blanket permission for anyone. Applications have to be considered on a case-by-case basis, and terms and conditions will apply. Now, I will say to you that those who've had pavement licensing within the city centre or other venues, you will have to apply for this authorisation process. We don't see that we can't say blanketly it's all going to be okay. There may be one or two instances where there are restrictions that are necessary, but many will be able to obtain the authorisation. But no, don't assume it. You must get that authorisation, or you will be be committing offence and will be asked to remove the relevant advertising. So authorisations can be withdrawn at any time with immediate effect at the discretion of the Birmingham 2022 Organising Committee. Trading, again, this is authorisation process. This is particularly the case for street traders and the like who have got authorisations within the area. So again, the authorisation process is open from the 10th of January to the 1st of July. It's free of charge, and it applies to the trading activities of street traders, peddlers, mobile traders, street entertainers, and pavement licences. So submissions are again via an application form, and you'll be able to get relevant documents online at that link. Again, applications will be decided on case-by-case basis, but will largely take into account any potential risk to public safety and security. Obviously, security at a major world or international event is something that's really important, and that is at the back of all of these types of restrictions that will be in place. And added to that, we've observed on just in our business as usual activities, we've actually found that many of street traders sometimes try and set up in areas that do stop pedestrian flow. So that's something we've got to deal with it. Unlike the advertising authorisations, the OC will grant authorisations on a first come, first served basis and will aim to notify applicants of the outcome within 30 days of receipt of application. They will liaise with us to make sure that street traders have the necessary permits already, so that it is quite important that, that people do this as soon as possible. Terms and conditions will apply to any and all trading authorisations. They will likely be similar to what the street trading consents if someone has that, but they won't necessarily be that for this 2-week period. Authorisations can be withdrawn at any time with immediate effect at the discretion of the OC. Next slide, please. Thank you. There are exceptions for charities. The restrictions on advertising do not apply to advertising in a games location or its vicinity where the advertising is carried out by a charity, wholly or partly for the purpose of promoting the charity. Promoting services for the prevention of relief of poverty, advancement of health or saving lives, human rights, conflict resolution or reconciliation, or the promotion of religious or racial harmony or equality and diversity. The relief of those who need in need, particularly because of youth, age, ill health, disability, financial hardship or other disadvantages, or promotion of the efficiency of the police, fire and rescue services or ambulance services. The exception does not apply to anything done by a charity, partly for the purpose of promoting a product or a business other than a charity. So if there's a trading arm to the charity, that will not have an exception. It will require an authorization. So I'm not going to go through all of this slide, but it does actually give you, there's some classes have been selected specifically to avoid any conflict with sponsor or partner rights and interests. So authorization is not required where any activity falling under the classes in the table on the right is covered by an exception. So you've got things like education, local landmarks and attractions, film releases, TV programs, public bodies where the advert promotes a product, business or service. And this includes many other sort of the explanatory notes there. Next slide, please. Where can you find out more? Well, it's all on this website, the Get Set Advertising and Trading Guidance, on that link. Next slide, please. That's it, I think. So happy to take any questions and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Paul. That's really helpful. I should add as well that my colleague Erin has put together a briefing note summarising those main points, which you can find on the Chamber website, and we will include a link to that. So as I said, we've got around 15 minutes or so for questions, and I can see that a few have already come into the Q&A box, and I'll bring those up in a second. But if I could ask all of the speakers to rejoin us, because I had a couple of quick questions that I wanted to run past you as well. So Paul, with the application process then, I mean, how long is that likely to take from start to finish? And do you expect there might be some people looking to potentially appeal those decisions, and what would they have to do to kind of go to that stage?
Right. So the whole process is managed by the Birmingham 2022, the organising committee. I would expect that the advertising process will be relatively quick. That would be, I don't see why that can't take 7 to 14 days, but they might kill me for saying something like that. And obviously with the 30 days is at the backdrop for the actual trading restrictions. In terms of appeal, that everything's there, and I think there's it's important to give as full an information as possible, because we've got several thousand businesses that are impacted by the trading restrictions across the whole of Birmingham. So the earlier you get anything in, if there are any issues that require resolution, if there's an appeal process, then that has to go back to Birmingham 2022. There's no formal appeal process as far as I'm aware. I think it's just a question of they will review any sort of a turned down application. But it is quite important, particularly I think for those businesses who are right at the heart of this, that we protect their, if you like, their normal business operation during it. It's just those added bits. Craig mentioned earlier, we want a real festival for the whole of this games period and right through the summer celebrating. And it's so important that the businesses who are there every day, every year, and all of this sort of thing, they get part of that wonderful festival that we're going to put on.
Yeah, thank you for that, Paul. Yeah, just over to you then, Craig. I mean, obviously, in terms of previous Commonwealth Games that we've seen across the globe, were there kind of particular learnings that you kind of took from that and looking to apply with the upcoming games in Birmingham? And I'm thinking, obviously, for example, I lived in London during the Olympic Games, and I know obviously the messaging was very much kind of out there from early doors and very much kind of telling people to obviously be prepared and be ready for any particular disruption. But when it came to it, the disruption was actually fairly minimal because people are prepared so effectively.
Yeah, I think look, that's a really, really important point. And what we also saw in 2012 is people stayed away, and actually the centre of London after the sporting event was really, really quiet. And similarly in 2014 with the Glasgow Commonwealth Games, the community came and participated a bit, but it wasn't really focused on the communities in the city. So we're making a real effort this year to really make sure that the whole Commonwealth Games isn't just about 11 days of sport. It's about the cultural festival that's already started, and it's very much around community events. And look, we've had an unprecedented couple of years, haven't we, with COVID-19, and we know that businesses in the city have a phenomenal opportunity ahead of them, and it's about encouraging people to come and participate, and as Sarah was saying, be sensible about it. There are always the rules, and Paul has, I think, very eloquently laid out some of the key restrictions that are going to happen across the city. But what we're really asking you to do through these conversations is, look, prepare for it, think about it, and position yourself so that you can get the very best out of it as businesses. But it is, for us, about community. If there were ever a city that represented the Commonwealth, it's Birmingham. And we as a city and a region have such a rich, diverse culture and set of communities, and this is time to celebrate all of them, and that's at the heart of our planning and our thinking at this time.
No, thank you, Craig. And Sarah, just very quickly then, a couple of questions related to the transport network. So the Birmingham Clean Air Zone, I presume that's all going to be running as per usual throughout the duration of the games itself?
Yes, it will be. The Clean Air Zone is an important step to improve air quality within the city. So it still will be in operation as it is during the games.
And just on that then, obviously, as you know, sometimes when there's traffic delays in the city centre, they can have that knock-on effect for other parts of the city as well. I mean, do you expect that's likely to happen during the games or during the busy periods, and have steps been put in place to minimise kind of disruption further afield?
Yeah, we're focusing on the region as a whole. What happens in the city centre and around the venues will of course affect the rest of the area as people reroute perhaps around those busy places. So with the advice that we're going out to and the people we're speaking to, it's not just those who are really in close proximity to the venue, it's the city as a whole and the region as a whole as well, and particularly speaking to perhaps freight operators who work across the region as a whole, who whilst they may not be delivering to a venue will be affected as the 1 million plus people descend on the region, and they do need to get around, and as do all of us as we go about our day-to-day business. So it's everywhere will be busier than usual, and it's making those choices to both support the transport network, but also ensure you can carry on with your journey and not be unduly disrupted.
Brilliant. Right, so we've got some questions that came throughout the session, which I will go through, and then we've got another one in the chat box as well. So I'll start with Rachel Eade, who asks, are there any new or special arrangements for New Street Station? Business deliveries, passenger control, passenger drop-off, pickup, etc. Sarah, I'll come to you on this one. So I know you mentioned obviously New Street Station during the marathon, but do you want to pick this one up?
Yes, so on during the games, there won't be any special arrangements aside marathon day, so I'll come on to that in a moment. As you can imagine, the station itself will be very busy. Lots of people coming from all over the country and further afield to come and see the events. So the station itself will be busier than usual. On marathon day, there will be some changes to some of the operations as the marathon route goes past the station. Some of those kind of final elements, including some of where buses are moving to, haven't been confirmed yet, so that will be confirmed in the coming months. But it's really just marathon day where you'll expect to see changes to those things like passenger drop-off. On other days it will be as normal.
That sounds good. We also had a question from Robert R that said, will delivery drivers be able to show confirmation of delivery on an electronic device?
Yes, thanks, Robert. Yes, please do use electronic devices or paper copies, that's fine. We're very much trying to be the greenest game, so no need to print something out if you've got an electronic device, and I know lots of providers use those these days, so that'll be absolutely fine.
Great, and then we've got a final question from Amy Deacon, and which says, will Google be updated on the road closures and peak busy periods? So when using Google for Route Planner, will it take into account the road closure and traffic?
Yes, Amy is the short answer. So we use a system which is called One Network, which then goes out and updates all navigation systems, including Google. So things like road closures, the road event closures in particular, will be on there. In terms of traffic, Google and most providers work on a live system, so it will pick up automatically that there is additional traffic in certain areas, and then reroute you accordingly.
Thank you for that, Sarah. Right, so we've got another question in the chat box, which is from Jonathan Dudley. And he says, look, this all sounds like obstructions to business. What are the opportunities for local businesses presented by the games, and what can be done to foster that? So Craig, I might bring you in for that one. And then secondly, he's obviously made the point that comparing the transport network in Birmingham to London, obviously very different networks there. They have a fully functioning transport system. And he's asking, how can people use public transport if the viability is not there and the efficiency is not there? So Craig and Sarah, I don't know if you want to pick those questions up.
Yeah, if I pick the first one up. So what are the opportunities outside the venues? And we saw exactly what's happening with the venues. We are really encouraging businesses, communities, to really engage on all those things that are non-sporting. The cultural festival is already live, and we've invested £12 million across the region with ourselves and other partners to put on a spectacle. There are a phenomenal amount of events happening throughout the summer. There are 107 specific events to cultural groups that are being put on by groups in the city specifically. The Queen's Baton will be in the city for the last 2 days, so made in Birmingham and coming home to Birmingham. It will cover the 10 constituencies in the city on the 27th and 28th, and on the evening of the 27th it will come into Victoria Square. We've heard extensively from Sarah around the road events. Yes, that does cause some disruption, but for your staff and for yourselves to recognise that some people will have tickets for sporting venues, and there's over 1 million tickets. I think across the region it's about 1.5 million, and at the moment the ticket sales have gone extremely well. But there's the opportunity to come out and participate in the city around the triathlon, and to come out and view the marathon as well. So as your staff and your colleagues, there's the opportunity for them and their families to really participate. The other area is there will be 7 festival sites across Birmingham itself. Live sites will be in Victoria Square and in Smithfield. So there's the opportunity to come and participate in those. We encouraging businesses to go about their work as normal, and we're encouraging businesses to participate in some of the visits around UK House. So the Department for International Trade, Investment and Trade is really gearing up a whole programme to draw major investors into the city and into the region, and trying to get them to see this as a real opportunity. And we're working with the West Midlands Growth Company to make sure that we get the very best out of it. And Anil Rami and his team have done a tremendous amount of work, and we're very much working in dialogue with them. The other key thing to note as well is we will be televised to 1.5 billion people across the globe. Interestingly, the biggest global audience is United States. But setting that aside for a moment, what does this mean? Well, from a tourism perspective in future years, Manchester, 20 years ago, 10 years ago with London, Glasgow, all saw an uplift in visitor numbers to their cities of a 30% bounce the following year after their major games. So this is a real opportunity for us to show ourselves off this year, and people to see us and see what we're about, and see us as a destination that they want to come to from around the world. And that's an opportunity to not only just think about it as this summer, but how they can exploit this for future years as well. Raj, I think I've covered it. If there's anything.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think obviously that legacy element, like you mentioned, is absolutely vital, really, isn't it? Thinking about the longer term development as a city, and obviously our standing on the world region as well. So yeah, really important point there. Sarah, can I bring you in on the question on the transport networks?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for your question, Jonathan. So in terms of picking up on that point, asking people to use public transport, those 4 R's that I mentioned, and the remote one in particular, completely aware that using public transport or walking or cycling isn't an option for everyone. So whilst it might work for me getting to work, it may not work for you. But it's looking at those options and what you can do. So whereas remoding might be an option for me, for the person sitting next to me, retiming might be a more appropriate option for them. The person sitting next to them, that might also not be appropriate. So they may just have to allow a bit of extra time to complete their journey. I think it's worth mentioning that additional transport will be put in place for spectators to support the road network and public transport for the population of the West Midlands. So that will be spectator shuttle buses and a series of park and ride sites as well to stop to protect that public transport network for the rest of us who are going about our day-to-day business. I'll also touch on the metro. Obviously, it's unfortunate that we've had to close it again, and we're working really closely with the suppliers to get the new parts of the systems that we need. I can't unfortunately give you a date today that will reopen, but we hope it will be in the next 3 to 4 weeks that it will be reopened, and very much for the games we are ensuring that it's open to provide that additional capacity that is needed and that really good service that it provides.
Thank you for that. So Connor, I can see obviously you put a question there around the advertising measures which apply to your industry, and I think Paul has come back with a comment just to say, can you email him directly, and then obviously he can come back to you with a thorough response. Paul, one other question we had, as you can see in the chat function there, is UKBJ, will my permits for vehicles cover all areas? As beer deliveries, we cover the whole area. So I think obviously Wolverhampton, Birmingham, Sutton, or do I need a new permit for each event?
I think you might have to go to Sarah on that one, yeah, but I think it is each local area will have their own system. But as we say, they are free. But Sarah will confirm that one because it's more the road transport rather than my area.
Yeah. So the permits in those permit areas are for residents and businesses in that area who need to access, and they are area specific. So what would work at Alexander Stadium wouldn't say work at Sutton. However, as a delivery provider, you do not need to apply for a permit. What delivery providers need to provide is some kind of proof of order confirmation or proof of manifest with the address that they're going to within that area, and also some form of personal company ID. With those two items, the marshals on those vehicle checkpoints will know to let them through. Due to the sheer number of deliveries that happen, it wouldn't be feasible for all deliveries to have permits for all the different areas. So that's why we've taken that approach for those deliveries.
Sounds good. And then a few final questions before we wrap up. So Rachel was asking, I think you've already covered this, Sarah, are we confident that all the construction works at road stations will be completed and cleared for the games? And she's asked, will the Floozy in Victoria Square be working? And then a final question from James Roberts, which is, when are games tickets being issued and will they be accompanied with detailed travel advice for spectators?
Shall I cover the second question, which is the goddess in the fountain is being unveiled today. The leader of the council, Councillor Ian Ward, is opening it back up today after the refurbishment. It is very much a key centrepiece and something that we in the city are very proud of. So, of course, our expectation is that that it will be open. In fact, it's an important point Rachel's making in that we've been really careful about the improvements around the city centres, particularly around the public realm. You would like to make everything absolutely perfect, but we recognise as well that businesses have had to recover from the close downs that we've had during COVID, and we've been sympathetic around the works in order to allow traders to go about their businesses. So there's some dressing that will go across the city that will help, but the other sort of detailed public realm works that may have been anticipated and planned for, we've been really careful not to put in. So it's I think we've done it to the right level, and when you come into the city centre, you will see that we are absolutely set to welcome both the athletes, because without the athletes we don't have an event, visitors to the city, and there are lots of people who haven't come into the city centre for a long time who are absolutely going to be drawn to it, and also for our residents. And it's so important that our residents feel that this is about them and this is their summer, and I hope you do as well.
Thank you, Craig. And then very quickly then, Sarah, a couple of questions there on the tickets and what the information will be issued on there. And then final question from Robert saying, will there be any guidelines on acceptable company ID for delivery drivers?
Yeah, so Rachel's question at the top in terms of construction works on roads, there will be a roadworks embargo during the games, meaning that aside emergency works, roadworks can't happen. Again, that's to ensure there's as much capacity on the road network as possible. In terms of the games tickets being issued, I don't know that question, unfortunately. That's something for the organising committee. I can talk about the detailed travel advice for spectators. That will definitely be the case. There's a spectator journey planner, which will have all of those additional spectator transport options on, such as the shuttle buses, so you can make an informed choice as to how to travel to your venues. And then, Robert, guidelines on acceptable company ID for delivery drivers. Ideally, it would be some kind of pass which has both their name on and the company name on. Happy to pick up with you afterwards, though, if that would be an issue, and how we can get around that.
Thank you, Sarah. And Jonathan, I saw your question about involvement local chambers are having on the international trade opportunities you're referring to, and some keynote events promoting using connectors to local businesses. On the international hub, you'll see that we've done similar events in the past. Our international team is looking to do more collaborative work with key stakeholders across the region in the next few months to showcase those opportunities as well. So we'll keep you posted on those. I'm conscious of time, so we're coming up to the 9 o'clock mark. So I just want to say thank you so much to our speakers, to Craig, to Sarah, to Paul, my colleague Erin, and obviously Rachel from Birmingham City Council in their role in organising this this session. And just to say thank you to all of you for joining us. I think it's been a really important session, lots of information in there, lots of follow-up activity that we can do as well. So we will share the various links and slides. And again, if you want to get in touch with any of the participants, obviously feel free to get in touch with ourselves and we can follow up if you've got any further questions. But all that's left to me, it says, have a great day, everyone, and see you in a few weeks, and enjoy the games and have a great day. See you soon. Thank you.